Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Family Support Q&A for Tuesday. And we've got a really fun session today. You guys know we offer all kinds of family workshops and family support groups, and we're going to really dig in today and learn about one of my favorites, which is our Parent Cafés that we offer. And we've got a couple great guests. I'm going to just go ahead and introduce my two guests today, and they are both part of our Capable Kids and Families team. I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about who they are and their history at the St. Louis Arc. So I'm going to start today with Anne Denman. Welcome back, Anne.
Hi, Sharon. Great to be here. As Sharon said, my name is Anne Denman. I am a family resource specialist in the Capable Kids and Families program, and that means that I get to work with families of very young children with developmental disabilities, facilitating equipment lens from our library of developmental toys and equipment. And I also help families to assess family needs and provide information and referrals to community resources. And last but not least, I'm the parent of two beautiful teenage boys, one of whom has developmental disabilities. So I'm very familiar with many of the life journeys that our parents and families at the ARC are experiencing.
So my name is Latrice Moore, and I am also a family resource specialist and did a wonderful job of telling you guys what we do in our role as a family resource specialist. And fun fact, like Anne, I have 4 beautiful children, and my son was actually in the Capable Kids and Families program. And when he turned 7, it was like such a loss that we had to leave the program because he aged out. Shortly after that, I ended up working in the program, and I get to support the same families in the way that I was supported when my son was going through, and it's a wonderful program.
I just love so much that both of you guys have a journey, both at the ARC, but also a journey as parents. And I think that's such an important component to your being able to really support our families here. You've got both professional and personal experience to share, and that's so amazing. So I want to start off really telling people what is Parent Cafe? It's a kind of a specific model, and why did we decide to adopt it? Latrice, you always are the planning mind behind our Parent Cafés. So why don't you start, and then Anne can jump in.
Well, when I was introduced to Parent Cafe about just under 3 years ago, it is a model that was created by Be Strong Family. I think they've been around since about 2012, and they have these 5 protective factors that they feel that will help make families stronger. And you get to go through this training, and you sit in there as if you're a parent. And when you get through, you learn how to facilitate a parent cafe. And what it really is a support group. It is a support group for parents. At the ARC, our parent cafes are specifically for parents that have children with disabilities. So everything that we do in our parent cafe is surrounding that fact that our parents have children with disabilities. And it's conversations. That's basically what it is. It's just facilitated conversations. It's not a thing where you go in and someone's just spewing a lot of information at you. It's just parents talking to parents, because having those conversations, making those connections, it makes a person feel as if what they're going through is not uncommon. Like there's someone out there that you can connect with that understands your journey and understands your plight. And the 5 factors that we center our conversations around are parental resilience, positive social connections, concrete support in the time of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, and social and emotional competence. So we pick conversations and themes. Our conversations surround the themes, but we pick themes from those 5 factors.
What makes this different from another support group at the ARC?
So I've been in support groups before, and we just kind of go in there and start talking, and it's not around any one thing particular. It's just everyone sharing their experiences. But the thing I love about Parent Cafe is, for instance, we choose a theme. And we choose our themes based on kind of like what is going on, with the parents that we're supporting. And with parents who have children with disability, we kind of like have a feel for that. So we'll choose things like perfection is overrated, because a lot of times as parents with children with disabilities, we feel this need to have to be perfect because we have to show the world that, yeah, even though this is hard, we got to make it look easy, but it's overrated. And so the one thing I like that sets these conversations apart is that they're guided. We're speaking on a particular thing, and we give them questions to consider. Now, sometimes those conversations take off and get a mind of their own, but we kind of guide them with the questions. And Parent Cafe has a package of questions that we can ask surrounding different topics. And so we just choose the questions that are relevant to our theme to just kind of help kick off that conversation for the parents. And it always just takes off from there.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that distinguishes our facilitated conversations are Parent Cafe agreements that we have. And these are just sort of rules of respectful conversation that help everybody in the Parent Cafe, in the support group, to feel safe and positive. So the agreements we have that we share every time we have a Parent Cafe are that we speak from our own experiences, not from the perspective of others. We speak for ourselves using I statements. We practice listening very attentively as such an important communication strategy. So at the beginning of every Parent Cafe, we have a few minutes where we share with each other and practice listening attentively without interrupting somebody else's story. And that can be set a very positive tone because a lot of us, especially if we're looking for those connections with others, we tend to want to jump in, even if it's with empathy, but just sitting back and allowing somebody to tell their story can be a really powerful thing as well. We refrain from making judgments, either positive or negative. And this can be important. Obviously, people's negative judgments are not something we need in a support group, but even making positive judgments can affect the tone of a group and group dynamics. So we try to refrain from doing that. We don't give advice. We listen, we empathize, but we don't tell other people what they should do. We keep everything in the Parent Cafe support groups confidential. So what's talked about in the group stays in the group. That way everybody feels safe to share. And of course, we discourage any electronic presence. Now that's a little trickier these days because in pre-pandemic days, our Parent Cafes were in person. Now they are technological by definition because we've been doing our cafes over Zoom to keep everybody safe and healthy. So the way we do that is through technology, but again, try to minimize disruptions with outside technology.
I think one of the things that helped us really launch cafes was that we used to offer childcare. So mom and dad or whomever was the caregiver could drop off their kids and know that they were safe and going to have a fun time while they had a chance to really sit down and talk together. So I look forward to those days happening again. I'm hopeful. Although I will say the virtual environment has also been really great. And I think we've had more participation from some families who it's difficult to leave the house and pack everybody up and come to our building. So I kind of alluded to this, but who do you guys tend to think should come to Parent Cafes? Is it for a certain age group, a certain role in the family? What makes for this to be a good experience for somebody?
For me, it's not an age range. We have had parents of children who are older. We have parents of children who are younger, And we keep that in mind when we separate into groups. So we have a big group conversation where we share resources and we're talking, and then we separate into smaller groups. And sometimes we'll put the younger kids, and then sometimes we'll put the older parents with older kids, and then we put them together because there's so much knowledge to be learned. I have, I won't say names, but there are a couple of parents I know, with one with the older child, one with the younger child with the same disabilities, and they connected because there was so much knowledge to be had, someone who went down that road, and they still to this day are meeting and talking. And I find that those kind of connections can be had. Doesn't matter if the disabilities are different, you can connect on so many different levels. And also, it's not just parents that have attended our cafes. It is also like caregivers, uncles, aunts, therapists, people who take care of children with disability, who just want to talk about this, this life, this journey that they're on, and supporting families and taking care of the kids who have disabilities. So it's more than just, age.
One of the things that can be really great, an unintended consequence of having the cafes be virtual, is that everyone is attending the cafe from their own living room, so to speak. So it does have a feeling of people sitting around in their collective living rooms, connecting to other parents who have walked a similar journey. And I find that that's really what parents, families, and caregivers of individuals with disabilities are looking for. They're looking to connect with others who have shared similar experiences, because sometimes raising our children or our families with disabilities can be isolating and lonely, and it can be hard to find people to connect with who understand. And there can just be such a huge sense of relief at being with others who have shared our journeys, that you don't need to explain your situation to. And that sense of connection to people who understand can really build our strength, our resilience, and all sorts of factors that help us to be stronger family units.
I agree. Part of the Parent Cafe process, when we're in it, towards the end, it's like what we call harvest. So we always ask the families, like, what are your takeaways from tonight? And every single cafe, some family, one parent or more will say, man, I don't feel alone. Like, it's just good to know that other people are going through what I'm going through, that understand. Even in your own family, you can feel alone, because they, if you're not walking that walk, if you're not on that journey, you may not truly understand. So they always have that takeaway of, it's just good to know that somebody else out there understands what I'm going through and I'm not alone. There are tears shed in those cafe, there's laughter, there's stories, and that's what makes the connection for me. I've shed some of those tears myself, so I'll say it can get deep.
And I just feel really compelled to say to our listeners that the things that you're talking about really have been researched, that families need to feel that connection to people that have a shared experience, for them to have confidence in their own parenting, confidence in their decision making as they move forward, and satisfaction with their family. My family is okay just the way it is. And so those things have been documented. Parent Cafe is an evidence-based model. I think that those things are important, that families know that we're trying to bring them resources and information that we know has been proven to help you be more successful. I want to just dig in briefly to the connections piece. Latrice, you talked about a couple of families that connected from different age ranges. Do either of you have a story about connections made that came about because of Parent Cafe that you think are really powerful?
I just think, like the one that I shared previously, there was a mom, a family of an older child with a particular disability that connected with one of the families that I support. And she was just telling me just how wonderful it is. They meet, they talk outside of that, and just imagine like being able to get that knowledge that, that pathway you're going out. And it makes you, they have questions and things that they've been through that you may have never even thought of. And she was like, it just blows my mind. And I'm like, well, that's what we want at Parent Cafe. I think that's kind of the point, is to make those connections. It's not just to have conversations, but so that they can connect with each other outside of this and continue to grow and build that support system, those natural support systems.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Parent Cafe training I went through a couple of years ago, and that was in person before the pandemic. And it was attended by mostly mothers, mostly female caregivers, and most of whom did not know one another, but over 2 days, they really formed a lot of connections, offered guidance to one another. It can be so powerful to have somebody show you the way and share a resource that helped them and their child, their family along their journey. Because otherwise we're each sort of building the road as we travel it. And it can really be very helpful to have other families share the roadmaps that they've already established through their real lived experience.
One of the other things I was going to say that I felt was very positive and powerful to me was dads. There are a few of our Parent Cafes where we have dads that come on, and there's actually another group that the ARC has where they're just dads getting together, because a lot of times when you think of Parent Cafes and you think of like who's the caregiver in the home, we think of moms, being on there, but there are dads that are in it. And I remember the one time we had so many dads, we put them in a group together to talk, and it was just, you would think like, oh, they wouldn't share their feelings, but it was just amazing to see how they were just getting along and connecting. And even afterwards, like when it was over, they're still sitting down at the table talking. And we were like, this is just wonderful. That's the connections we want to make, so that dads and moms and aunties, uncles, whoever, can feel like they're welcome and they have a spot too in this conversations that we're having.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Parent Cafe, but I have been struck by how many men come to the meetings. And I think that's really nice, because you do get that broader parenting perspective, and you also get the opportunity for co-parents to be learning some of these things, having these conversations together, maybe not in the same groups, maybe they are, but then they go home and they can talk about that, and both people have had the same experience, which is pretty cool too. One of my strongest Parent Cafe memories was the first cafe we did during COVID, and we were really afraid that nobody was going to want to come, and we had a huge sign up, and people were actually in tears at that first meeting, because so many of them, it was the first time they've had an adult conversation since COVID started. And I always thought that really hit me hard. And I was very excited that we were able to offer that space to people. I have a question about whether or not families can introduce themes to Parent Cafe, but and just so I can start this conversation, the themes are chosen in advance so that families know what they're going to come in and experience. But maybe we can talk a little bit about how you all think about themes and what's happening within the cycle of a year or the current experience people are having. But then also, how do we engage our families in the planning and the production of a Parent Cafe? Because I think that's been really cool as well.
Well, we have a ton of things. And like I said before, we pick our things based on like the climate of what's going on with the people that we support. And like a lot of the things we've recently had during the pandemic has been like talking about, caring for yourself, finding fun, laughter, and humor and things, being strong, seeing your strengths, try not to be perfect. We before had surveys that we did during the Parent Cafe where we always asked the question, like, what things do you want to see discussed? Our parents can always share that with us during the cafe and our chat boxes virtually, because we're not doing those physical surveys anymore. And we try to collect that information while it's in the midst of the Parent Cafe. They can always share, their ideas. And actually, the way that this was meant to be was for eventually the parents to actually take over the planning and take on, and we just kind of have a smaller role of supporting the parent cafes moving forward. We have had some parents that have been trained in the model, and they can be table hosts, they can be hosts, they can host the parent cafes as well. And so that is our goal. We actually have parents who are interested right now to do training, and we have some trainings that we're looking for, hopefully coming up soon. So if parents are interested in actually hosting and being a part of the planning, they can at any step. But we do our planning usually during the workday, and we have parents that work. And so it's hard to coordinate that, but we do take in any advice that they give us on how they think it should be given or ran.
Mm-hmm.
And Latrice mentioned table host. Can you talk about what the role of a table host is and how families can kind of embrace that?
Sure. So there are a couple of different hosts to each Parent Cafe meeting, and one is the host of the entire cafe who facilitates in a broader sense. And then the table host role is a person who might help facilitate the smaller conversations, the smaller group conversations that are happening at each cafe table. So the table host would be modeling the agreements, for example, the active listening, the type of reflection that we promote, just facilitating a discussion that's around the specific question that's being discussed right there. Modeling those positive communication skills, refraining from interrupting or making judgments. So they really just help to set the tone for the discussion. And also, another thing that's really important for the table hosts is that they do have some familiarity with the community that they're serving, with the issues that they're engaging with, obviously. And that's true of both the cafe hosts and the table hosts.
Yeah, I think it's such a cool format. I think it's hard to grasp sometimes to me what that structured conversation is going to be like, but to have a table host that has some pre-prepared questions around the theme that can guide the discussion within the group, I think it really helps. And I don't know, do either of you, can you give an example of what a question that might be tossed out to a group of parents or caregivers might be?
In December, we had a Parent Cafe, and the theme that night was seeing life through different lenses. And we just that whole thing was surrounding, looking at the way, looking at what other people from the outside are looking in. And so some of the questions were, what are some positive things you learned about parenting from the lens of other people? Describe a situation where you changed your perspective and it changed the outcome for your child. What would your child say they like best about your parenting? And that question is having parents kind of look at, their parenting through the lens of their child. And so we give those questions to the table hosts, who introduce them in their smaller groups to the parents, and they get to choose which questions they want to talk about. And it's kind of questions like that. We try to spark conversations around the theme. So the theme, looking through other lenses, was, surrounding perspective. And so a lot of times it's hard for us. Like for me, I'll give an example, just how they would answer those kind of questions. When I'm a parent and I'm thinking about, and I'm in an IEP and I'm like, you don't understand what I'm trying to say and all these kind of things, I kind of have to take a step back and put myself in the shoes of a therapist who see so many students and so many parents. And I was like, they're doing their best and they're working with the knowledge that they have from him being limited with COVID going on. So just kind of taking a step back and looking at, life through their lens. And it kind of makes me feel like, okay, well, we have to find a way to work together, because I can see where you're coming from, but, and helping other people see it through the parents' lens as well. So we kind of go along those. Those are just a few examples of questions that parents answer during Parent Cafes. And those questions are from Be Strong Family. They have done the research. They have looked at how to start into these discussions, and they have questions for each factor. And even though we have a broader theme, the theme is supported by a factor that, one of the 5 factors that I talked to you guys about at the beginning. So in that case, it's parental resilience, just looking at, we have to see life through other people's lenses, even through the lens of our child, that we're supporting. What could life, we're thinking how hard it could be for us being a parent. What does it look like looking at it through their lens? And so as parents, we have to let that resilience shine through. So we choose things, we have topics, and it's all based on, like you said, evidence-based that Be Strong Family has come up with when they chose these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. I love that. I think those questions really help to clarify, because those are not the kind of things that you might just have casual conversation about. A lot of times we're just getting dinner on the table, getting kids dressed and ready for bed, and you don't have a chance to just think about some of those things. So I think it's such a wonderful program. I'm so glad you guys were able to join me today to come in and talk about this.
I just wanted to, reiterate how much an opportunity like Parent Cafes help parents to feel supported, so much less isolated and more resilient by connecting with others who are walking the same journey or similar journeys. That is such a powerful thing, and really helps so many people to keep going. So we really encourage those sorts of connections and hope that many more of you can join us for our cafes.
I just want to say thanks for having me here, Sharon, to be able to talk and share this information. I will just say to any parent out there who's thought about coming, but feels like, what do I have to contribute? Do not be afraid to give it a try. I always say, at least try once. My very first support group was not a Parent Cafe. When I was as a parent, I went in and I didn't even know the words to say. It wasn't guided. It was just like, there, but I cried the majority of the time. But in Parent Cafe, it's guided. And if you do cry, if you do laugh, you're going to be amongst friends and people who understand. And the conversations, don't worry about what you have to say. It's going to flow. And our parents in there, some of our repeat offenders that I like to say, we have some who come every single time. They really are good at engaging other families and say, hey, don't worry, we got you. And don't worry if your child is in the background, like, oh, my kids are running around, because that's okay. Because we have had families, we understand. We have had families with kids that pop on and come in with them on Zoom, because we understand that you need this moment for yourself to just have that engaging conversation. Please come, give it a try just at least once. I promise you're going to want to come back again. Thank you, guys.
You guys are such good marketers. And I'm going to thank some other people before we get off. And those are the people that fund our programs at a grant level that allow family supports and capable kids and families to do some things other than just talking directly to a parent. And that includes setting up things like Parent Café. So thank you to Arches, thank you to the United Way, and thank you to our county tax boards, Office for GE Resources, and the Productive Living Board of St. Louis County, all of which who contribute funding to do these kinds of programs and support our families. So, and thank you again, Anne and Latrice. It is just always such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for having us, Sharon. It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.